A janitor's mop, a 10-year-old boy, 5 paintbrushes worth more than gold, and one painting that would bring the most powerful man in American art to his knees. This is the true story of how a forgotten genius came back from the dead. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where it all began, in the shadows. Tuesday night, 11:47 p.m. The Davenport Gallery in downtown Philadelphia. While the city slept, Elara Hayes pushed her cleaning cart past $30 million worth of art. Nobody saw her. Nobody ever did. That's the thing about being a janitor in a place like this. You become invisible, a ghost in your own life. She moved silently past the Rothkos, the Pollocks, the modern masters. But it was the smell that hurt most. Turpentine, linseed oil, acrylic paint. Every breath was a knife to her heart, because once upon a time, these scents were her perfume. Once upon a time, her name was spoken in the same breath as the legends on these walls. But that was 13 years ago. Back when she was Elara Hayes, the sensation of the art world. Back when critics called her the voice of a generation. Back when her paintings sold for 6 figures before the paint was even dry. Back before the world took everything from her and left her with a mop, a bucket, and memories that wouldn't stop bleeding. She had it all once. A husband who was her muse, David Hayes, jazz musician, beautiful soul, the kind of love that comes once in a lifetime. A studio in Brooklyn, gallery shows that sold out in hours. The New York Times called her visceral, urgent, necessary. Museums were calling. And then, in one terrible winter, everything stopped. David collapsed during a performance at the Blue Note, stage 4 pancreatic cancer. 6 weeks later, he was gone. He was 28 years old. The day David died, so did Elara's colors. She tried to paint. God, she tried. But every canvas came out gray. Every brushstroke felt like a lie. The critics who once celebrated her now called her work derivative, lost, a shadow of her former genius. The gallery stopped calling. The collectors disappeared. When you're a rising star in the art world, everyone wants to be your friend. But when you're falling, they scatter like roaches when the lights come on. She was 6 months pregnant with Leo when she lost the studio, lost the apartment, lost everything except 5 paintbrushes, the last gift David had given her, made special with ivory handles he'd saved 2 years to afford. She held on to those brushes like they were pieces of his soul, because they were. Fast forward 13 years. Elara and Leo lived in a 1-bedroom walk-up in North Philadelphia. 4th floor, no elevator, but it was theirs. She worked nights at the gallery. Days she slept while Leo was at school. But here's what the world didn't know. Here's what nobody saw. While his mother scrubbed toilets at the gallery where her paintings once hung, Leo was becoming something extraordinary. That boy had his mother's gift, maybe even something more. Leo didn't just draw what he saw. He drew what he felt. He didn't draw buildings. He captured their loneliness. He didn't draw people. He revealed their hidden dreams. One Tuesday afternoon, Leo came running home from the library, clutching a flyer like it was a winning lottery ticket. His hands were shaking. His eyes were on fire. "Mama, Mama, look! The National Young Artists Competition. The winner gets a full scholarship to the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts. 4 years, Mama, everything paid for." Elara took the flyer with trembling hands. The Pennsylvania Academy, where she'd once taught a master class, where they'd once hung her work in the permanent collection. She read the rules and her heart broke all over again. Oil paints and gallery canvas weren't cheap. The entry fee alone was $300, more than their food budget for a month. But it was the next line that killed her. All submissions must demonstrate mastery of professional materials. Leo's beautiful sketches in his worn-out notebook, they wouldn't even qualify. That Saturday afternoon, Leo took his sketchbook to Wittenhouse Square, the fancy part of Philadelphia, where old money lived. He sat on a bench and drew the fountain, the flower vendors, the children playing. He didn't notice the three boys approaching until it was too late. Julian Davenport III, 11 years old, son of the gallery owner where Elara pushed a mop. Julian wore privilege like armor. Ralph Lauren polo, designer sneakers that cost more than Elara made in a week. "What's this?" Julian said, dripping with mockery. "You're going to enter the Young Artists competition with crayons and notebook paper? That's adorable, really." Before Leo could move, Julian snatched the sketchbook from his hands. His friends grabbed it, tossing it between them like a football. Pages ripped, drawings fell to the sidewalk. 13 months of Leo's soul scattered on the sidewalk. "My painting is being done on a $600 Belgian linen canvas," Julian laughed. "What are you going to submit? Stick figures in a spiral notebook?" Julian's friend chimed in mockingly. "Maybe his mom can steal supplies from the gallery. Oh, wait, she's just the cleaning lady. I heard my dad talking about her. Said she used to be some artist or something before she became a total nobody." That last part hit Leo like a bullet. His mother? An artist? A real artist? He gathered his torn drawings and ran all the way home. 7 blocks, not stopping until he burst through the apartment door. "Mama, Mama, is it true? Were you an artist? A real artist?" The silence that followed could have filled the Grand Canyon. She could have lied. Should have, maybe. But she was so tired. Tired of being invisible. Tired of pretending her past didn't exist. So she told him everything. "I was, baby. Once upon a time, I was somebody. I had gallery shows in New York. Museums brought my work. Your father, he believed in me more than I believed in myself. We were going to change the world together." "What happened?" "Life happened, baby. Your daddy got sick. I lost my colors, lost my courage, lost everything except you. You're my masterpiece now, the only one that matters." That night, Elara couldn't sleep. She knew what she had to do. She had to enter that competition. Not for himself, for her, to prove that the art world was wrong to forget Elara Hayes. The deadline was 3 weeks away. Leo did the math. Even the cheapest oil paints and canvas would cost $400. The entry fee was $300, $700 total. They had $43 in the bank. He tried everything. Asked Father Santos at the church. Asked Mrs. Washington next door. Even stood outside the art supply store for 2 hours, hoping someone would sponsor him. Nobody stopped. Leo went home defeated. And that's when Elara made a decision that would change everything. At 6 a.m., while Leo slept, she opened the box she hadn't touched in 13 years. 5 paintbrushes, the finest sable hair, ivory handles hand-carved by a master craftsman in Florence. David had spent 2 years saving for them, working double shifts at the jazz club. He'd given them to her the night he proposed. "I'm sorry, baby," she whispered to the brushes, to David. "I'm so sorry. But our son, he has the gift. He has your courage and my hands. I have to let him fly. You understand, don't you? You'd want this too." She took the bus to Old City, to Franklin's Pawn and Estate Jewelry. The pawnbroker was a thin man with sad eyes, who'd seen 1,000 desperate people. But when Elara opened that box, he whistled low. "Lady, these are museum quality, 19th century ivory, before the ban. The craftsmanship alone. Where did you get these?" "My husband, he's gone now." "I'm sorry. I can give you $800. That's fair." $800. Enough for paint, canvas, framing, entry fee, and 2 months' rent they were behind on. Enough to save them from eviction. Enough to give Leo his shot. But it meant selling the last piece of David, the last piece of her old life. "Ma'am, you sure about this?" She thought of Leo's eyes when he talked about the competition. She thought of David's last words, "Don't let our son ever stop dreaming." She took the money. She came home with 2 massive bags, gallery-grade canvas, professional oil paints, every color, sable brushes, gesso, the works. When Leo came out of his room and saw it, he screamed, literally screamed with joy. "Mama, Mama, how did you... Thank you, thank you, thank you!" She held him tight. "You paint your heart, baby. You paint the truth." He was too excited to notice she was crying.
Too excited to see the empty space on her dresser where the wooden box used to be. But Leo wasn't a fool. 3 days later, while putting away clean laundry, he saw it. The empty space on his mother's dresser. The wooden box he'd seen there his whole life. Gone. And on the kitchen counter, a receipt from Franklin's Pawn. $800. Items sold: 5 antique paintbrushes, ivory handles, 19th century. Leo sat down hard on the floor. His mother, who could barely afford food, had sold her most precious possessions. For him, for his dream, the dream he didn't even know she once had herself. That night at dinner, he watched her differently, saw how she moved. Her hands still moved like an artist's hands, even holding a spatula. Saw how she looked at his new supplies with hunger and grief. And Leo knew exactly what he had to paint. For the next 17 days, Leo worked like a man possessed. Every day after school, he'd come home and paint. But he wouldn't let his mother see. Kept the canvas covered with a sheet. Worked with the bedroom door closed. He wasn't just painting. He was researching. He went to the library, looked up articles about his mother, found the old reviews, the magazine spreads, photos of her young and radiant standing beside David. He studied her old paintings in online archives, memorizing her brushwork, her use of light. And then he went to see Mrs. Washington. For 3 hours, she told stories. David playing saxophone on fire escapes in summer. How he and Elara would dance in the hallway. How he'd carried her supplies up 4 flights when she was pregnant. How he died asking Elara to promise she'd never stop creating. Leo went home with a heart full of stories and a vision crystal clear. May 15th, Competition Day. The Davenport Gallery opened its doors to young artists from across Pennsylvania. Rolls-Royces pulled up outside. Kids in designer clothes carried paintings that cost more than cars. Leo showed up on the bus, carrying his canvas wrapped in a bedsheet. Julian Davenport III arrived with an entourage. His painting came in a custom climate-controlled case carried by professionals. It was a technically perfect seascape, probably cost $5,000 to produce. Leo set up his painting in the corner, space number 47, the worst spot in the gallery, behind a column, bad lighting. He didn't care. He carefully positioned his canvas on the easel and covered it again with the sheet. The title card read simply, "My Queen." At 2 p.m., the judging would begin, but first there was someone Leo needed to see. He found his mother in the janitor's closet on the 3rd floor. She was on her lunch break, eating a sandwich, still in her uniform. "Baby, what are you doing here? The competition. Mama, I need you to come see something, please." "Leo, I'm working. Mr. Davenport finds out I left my post. Please, Mama, just 5 minutes. It's important." Something in his voice made her follow. They walked downstairs, her in her janitor's uniform, past all those fancy people in their designer clothes. People stared. Julian's mother actually sneered. But Leo held his mother's hand tight and led her to his painting. "Mama, before the judges see it, I wanted you to see it first." He removed the sheet, and Elara Hayes stopped breathing. The painting was her, but not as she was now. Leo had painted his mother as a queen. She stood in a janitor's closet, yes, mop bucket at her feet, cleaning supplies on shelves behind her, but she wore robes of gold and crimson. A crown of light surrounded her head. In one hand, the mop. In the other, a paintbrush, one of the 5 ivory-handled brushes painted in exquisite detail. Around her feet, sketched in gold, were Leo's childhood drawings, all the pictures she'd saved over the years. Behind her, ghostly but present, David stood with his saxophone watching her with pride. Leo had used her techniques, her brushwork, her use of light. He'd studied everything, and then he'd made it his own. The painting screamed one truth. This woman is a queen. She always was. The world forgot, but I never did. "Leo, baby, how did you... You gave up your brushes for me, so I used them. I painted what I see when I look at you. Not a janitor, a queen, my queen." They held each other and cried. Mother and son, artist and artist, and they didn't see the crowd forming, didn't see the people pulling out phones, didn't see the man in the expensive suit pushing through the crowd, his face pale as death. Augustus Sterling, age 68, the most feared and respected art critic in America. For 30 years, his word could make or break careers. He was bored for 2 solid hours, technically perfect paintings with 0 soul, rich kids with expensive materials and nothing to say. He was about to leave early when he heard something unusual. Crying. Real emotion in this mausoleum of privilege. He followed the sound to the back corner, space number 47. And then he stopped dead in his tracks. At first it was the subject, a janitor painted as royalty, the audacity of it, the social commentary. Then it was the emotion. It hit him like a physical force. But then he looked closer, at the brushwork, the use of light, the technique. He'd know that style anywhere. He'd been searching for it for 13 years. Elara Hayes, the genius who vanished, the one that got away, the greatest artist of her generation, gone like smoke. But here was her technique, her signature use of light, her soul. "No," he whispered, then louder. "No, it's impossible. Where is the artist? Where is the artist of this painting?" The crowd parted. Leo stepped forward, small and scared but standing tall. "I am, sir. I painted it." Sterling knelt down, bringing himself to Leo's level. His hands were shaking. "Child, the brushwork, the technique. Where did you learn to paint like this?" "My mama taught me, sir, and I used her brushes. Well, I used no memory of them. She sold them so I could buy supplies for this competition." Sterling's head snapped up. He looked at the janitor standing behind the boy, really looked at her, past the uniform, past the 13 years, and he saw her. Elara Hayes. The room exploded with whispers. People pulled out phones, started Googling. Elara Hayes, that Elara Hayes? The one who disappeared? She's been here the whole time? Augustus Sterling rose to his full height. When he spoke, his voice carried through the entire gallery. "Ladies and gentlemen, I have been judging art competitions for 30 years. I have seen 10,000 paintings, and in all that time, I have never been brought to my knees by a painting until today." He turned to the painting, his voice cracking. "This child has done something extraordinary. He has taken his mother's technique. Yes, his mother is Elara Hayes, the artist we lost 13 years ago. and he has made it his own. But more than that, he has painted truth. He has painted love. He has painted the most powerful portrait of maternal sacrifice I have ever witnessed. He turned to the crowd, tears now open on his face. We live in a world that measures success in dollars, in gallery space, in whose name is on the wall. And we forget that the woman mopping our floors might have once painted masterpieces. We forget that the person we don't see might be someone extraordinary. His voice rose. This boy painted his mother as a queen, because that's what she is. That's what she always was. We just stopped looking. Shame on us. Shame on me. He turned to Leo. Son, you've won this competition. But more than that, you've taught me something. You've taught all of us something. Technical skill is nothing without soul. Expensive materials are nothing without truth. Then Sterling did something nobody expected. He turned to James Davenport, the gallery owner. James, I want to commission these artists, both artists, a joint exhibition, here, in this gallery, 6 months from now. And that's when Elara Hayes, who had been silent, who had been invisible for 13 years, stepped forward. She looked at Sterling, at the crowd, at her son, and she spoke.
Mr. Sterling, I appreciate your offer, but that painting, it's not for sale. That's my son's first masterpiece, and it belongs to him, to us. It's going on our living room wall in our 4th floor walk-up, because that's our truth. That's our story. Sterling smiled, the first genuine smile anyone had seen from him in years. Miss Hayes, you're absolutely right. But the exhibition? Will you accept that? Will you paint again? Elara looked at her son, at the boy who'd painted her as a queen, at the child who'd given her back her name. And she felt something she hadn't felt in 13 years, the itch in her fingers, the hunger to create. Yes, I'll paint again. 6 months later, December 1st, the Davenport Gallery. The line to get in wrapped around the block. News crews, art critics from New York, London, Paris. This was the art event of the decade. Elara and Leo, the Queen and her Prince. The New York Times art critic wrote, Elara Hayes has returned from the wilderness with something we've lost in contemporary art, humanity. These paintings don't just show us life, they show us why life matters. 3 years later, Leo would become the youngest artist ever accepted to the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts, full scholarship. 5 years later, Elara's work would hang in the Museum of Modern Art. But the most important thing? That wooden box. Elara got it back, went to Franklin's Pawn 6 months after the exhibition, and bought back her brushes. $15,000. She paid it gladly. But she didn't keep them in a box anymore. She used them. Her and Leo, they shared them, passed them back and forth. His hand, her hand, same brushes, different visions. They say every story needs a moral, a lesson, something to carry with you when the story ends. So here's what Elara and Leo's story teaches us. The woman mopping your floor might be a genius. The child drawing in a worn-out notebook might be a master. The person you don't see might be extraordinary. Greatness doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's invisible. Sometimes it's pushing a mop and dreaming in color. Sacrifice is never wasted. Elara gave up her brushes, but they came back transformed. She gave up her dream, but her son gave her a bigger one. Love is like that. You pour it out, thinking you're emptying yourself, but you're really planting seeds. And finally, this one's important. Your past doesn't define your future. Elara spent 13 years invisible, but she was never really gone. The artist was always there, inside the janitor. The queen was always there, inside the woman the world forgot. You are not your circumstances. You are not your failures. You are not your grief. You are what you choose to become when you find the courage to try again. The greatest masterpieces aren't made of paint. They're made of courage. They're made of sacrifice. They're made of a mother who gave up everything so her son could dream, and a son who used that dream to give his mother back her wings. This is the story of Elara Hayes and Leo Hayes, the queen and her prince, the artist who came back from the dead, and the boy who gave her her life. So the next time you see someone mopping your floor or cleaning your office or doing the work you don't notice, look again. Really look, because you might be standing in the presence of royalty. You just don't know it yet.